Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons The Second Age. How are we all doing?
We're good.
Very good.
Excellent. So, without further ado, as we are rather late starting this evening, who wants to go ahead and tell me exactly what happened the last time we played this game?
Last time did we start off? We started off with the day after Grim had just had a talk with his dudes.
His dudes.
Yeah, his elite
Oh,
squad
yeah.
who'd had an internal bickering. So it was the day after that. And I don't remember what the first thing we got up to is. I remember obviously the trials we did.
Well, first of all, you'd previously sent a message to the Raven Queen. Or-
Yes, of course.
Asked V to get in contact with the Raven Queen on your behalf.
Oh yeah, because then we started with Arya being the first to wake up since she only needs 4 hours rest, and getting a message from the Raven Queen being like, "Yeah, that weird tavern you went to in the Shadowfell that one time, it's in town."
Yes. The House of Black Lanterns.
House of Black Lanterns, that's it. So we were told the House of Black Lanterns was in town, and so we let Vondal and the others know that we were going in, and off we went to the House of Black Lanterns, and we had our meeting with the Raven Queen, where she basically said, "Sure, I can give you, this information that you need, but you have to essentially pass these trials that my followers usually go through." To prove that you are worthy of these secrets, and that you're not gonna go blagging about this ancient magic to everyone. Basically.
In a few more words, but...
Yeah, in a few more words. That's the gist of it. We're doing a summary. I'm not recounting word for
Yep.
word from that session. So yeah, she teleported us off to the Shadowfell to do these trials. The first of which was a bridge that never seemed to end. Things got a bit rocky, and Elizabeth managed to motivate the others to keep going before eventually succumbing to it herself, but not before other members of the party went, "No, yeah, we are making progress." So we successfully made it across the bridge, and that was our first trial. We did it. We made it across the bridge. Then we came across a big door and spent a good 5 minutes trying to be like, how do we get through this door? And then we just asked the guy, and he opened the door for us. Then we spent another 15 minutes trying to navigate a tower when all we had to do was stand in the teleport circle and think to the next trial, because we're clever like that. And it took us to this empty room that was full of mirrors, and out of the mirrors came evil shadow versions of ourselves. Ooh, spooky. We had to confront ourselves. It was like the Dark Link fight from the Water Temple. Yeah. In Ocarina of Time. And so off we went. We successfully defeated our shadow selves in an epic bout. And then we progressed on to our third and final trial, which was a timed maze. A timed maze of ice. Which, yeah, basically we had to get through this maze before the water started to put out a flame at the far side. But we didn't quite make it in time, and the water did start dripping into the fire, and it filled the maze with a mist that honestly nearly killed us.
Yeah, that was
Arya did
close
go
call.
down, but Kelariis saved us with an immense act of heroics, smashing through walls of ice to get to the flame and protect it. Thereby saving all of us. So we moved on from that trial. We simply allowed the flame to die out on its own, as was the point of the trial. And at which point we moved on. And sure enough, we were confronted with the guy who the Raven Queen had told us to talk to at the end of all the trials. And so we told him that we sought the Raven Queen's blessing, and yeah, that she was expecting us, but given the ordeal that we'd gone through in the maze, we all wanted a chance to rest. And so I believe we were taking a short rest in this nice, cozy room with a fire.
You were,
Because
yes.
we were all probably very, very, very badly ice burned.
Yeah, you had pretty severe magical frostbite.
Yeah.
Um.
And I believe, and that's where we left off, with all of us having a short rest.
Yes.
After the maze.
I don't remember. I don't think you guys actually took the short rest. So do you want to go ahead and do that right now to get your things back?
Well, yeah, you can tell we didn't because if you scroll up, no one rolled hit dice.
Yes.
Also, we're all on shit all health.
Yeah, I've got 59 health.
Fine with my 8 HP. It's fine.
Yeah, so as I find the thing that it is that I need for this.
Now we've got that one image in the chat of Grim, slightly smaller.
Exactly.
That first roll is what Grim looks like when he's shrunk.
Like,
right.
His torso just, like, sliced off. It's fine.
Oh god.
Thank goodness.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's not what I meant.
So yeah, as the four of you are sort of like recovering yourselves, treating your wounds. Oh yes, Arya, did you want to use your feature for anyone in particular, or are you saving it for yourself?
I'm definitely saving it for myself because I have 1 hit point.
Okay, so yeah, just remember that you can't roll below half on your hit dice.
Guys, I have 69 health.
Nice. You can't heal
Nice.
anymore.
The optimal health value. So yes, as the four of you are treating your wounds, resting and recovering, the feather robed man in the wheelchair just sort of like continues to sort of mind his own business. Before like a few moments, like after, well, probably more like an hour has passed of him just sort of like letting you rest. You're getting towards the end of your long rest before he sort of like looks up from where it is that he is, probably like writing in a book. And he sort of like looks up and says, "So, now that your trial is complete, what do you intend to do?"
Oh.
Well, we wanted to talk to the Raven Queen because, well, there's a rather large threat to the world's continued existence that we'd like to, stop, but we don't know how their powers work.
Oh my god, can I stop rolling through 3? Sorry.
It's okay, just because they count as 6 because of your thing. Because he nods and sort of says, "Yes, as I said previously, I understand your need to search for this information, although I still believe it is information that would be best if the world forgot about it. I meant more in the wider sense. Beyond your mission."
So you mean like what will we do when we're not trying to save the world?
He folds the book up and like puts it to one side and sort of like wheels himself over so he's like turned to face you. And he just sort of like looks at you like scrutinizingly and just sort of says, "You have just faced the harshest of the Raven Queen's trials. I'm hoping that you have learned something of, well, the nature of mortality. That is what the trial is designed to teach. Most who face the trial dedicate themselves to the Queen. There are some for whom the trial is too much, even if they should succeed. I know your intention was not to take this trial to join our ranks, but color me curious if anything was learned."
It's definitely an interesting set of trials. And certainly posed a challenge. But I think in a lot of ways it has kind of reaffirmed things that or at least personally I already believe. I think the Raven Queen and I get along in a lot of ways, but but that is not why we were here.
He nods and just sort of says, "There is no right or wrong answer here. This is merely for my own curiosity as keeper of the trials."
Admittedly, I don't think. Well, though I have no clue as to what kind of people would make it through these trials. I hardly doubt that. That we belong to the average. So I'm not sure if you'll get much out of get much out of knowing this. Not that I have much else. Not that I would hide it from you, but I think some of us have already faced similar challenges. Maybe not like one-to-one identically, but definitely I think the bridge is one that applies to many situations.
He continues to sort of nod along as you say this, and he just sort of says, "No, I do not believe that you are among the usual who take this challenge. Most express anger, frustration, despair. You all seem resigned. I do not know whether that speaks to your fortitude or to your circumstance."
Perhaps a bit of both.
Perhaps. He clasps his hands together and says, "Well, I will not keep you further. When you are ready, you have but to wish, and the token will take you."
Shall we?
Sure.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
You hold the token and think about where you want to be in an audience with the Raven Queen. And the four of you are transported to a long, dark, sparsely furnished hall that some of you have been to before. At one end is a rather oppressive-looking throne covered in raven feathers. And seated in said throne is the Raven Queen herself. She sort of splays her arms open and sort of says, "You made it then."
That we did.
Well, welcome to my domain. For some of you, not the first time. She says this sort of looking at Elizabeth and Kelariis.
Yeah.
I think that kind of like it makes me realize, like, yes, that did happen, didn't it?
I suppose my visit was immensely brief.
Time here is subjective.
I feel like that's the case in a lot of places.
The further you travel from the material, yes. My domain is a little different to what some of you may be used to, but that is not why we are here. So, you took my trials, and you live to tell the tale. I suppose this is the point where you may ask, and I will endeavour to answer.
Well, I guess considering, well, you wish the secrets that we seek don't go, well, you would rather not have them unveiled. Perhaps we don't need to know the ins and outs. However, what we will need to know is, I guess we'll need to know a handful of things. What powers this ancient magic? Can it be stopped? And how? And can we protect ourselves against it? I guess those would be most burning questions.
She, leans forwards, hands into her lap, and just sort of says, "If you truly wish to understand the power that can dethrone a god, then I suppose we are best to start at the beginning. How much do you know of the gods? And I don't mean that in a sense of their liturgy. I mean, how well do you understand what they really are?
Like their makeup, their forms.
How they empower and sustain themselves.
Wasn't it through, well, through worship of sorts? The more followers they have, the stronger they are?
That is it at a rudimentary essence, yes. Do you know why worship is powerful?
I suppose not in a literal sense. Or a direct sense.
Then we will begin from there. I suppose the easiest metaphor for this is to take yourself as an example. You have a mastery of the arcane, yes. You can bend the weave of magic to your will. You know how to do that through arcane words, tools. I don't suppose you've ever stopped to ask yourself why you can do this.
Not myself, but I am aware of those who have attempted to look into the whys of, well, why magic behaves the way it does and why it works the way we know it to.
I was once a scholar of the same subject. The short explanation is that all creatures are of the weave. Your friend would call it Gaia, but the two are interchangeable and the same. All living beings are a part of Gaia, the weave, whichever you prefer. This is what I believe the more spiritually minded among you would call a soul. It is why every being that try that again. It is why every being in existence can be influenced and affected by magic, and in turn has each a small aspect of magic of their own. Some are capable of developing that more readily than others. But the truth... Crunch.
Oof.
Right, Luka.
Oh, sorry. I can't hear it when it does it.
Yes, that's just because we're getting feedback from your microphone. Anyway, yeah. So, she says, all creatures are of the weave and have a method of a minor ability to control it and be affected by it. The same can be said of the deities as well. They were all once beings of the weave, though they have since shed their more mortal shells and become forever intertwined with the weave. Think two stones in a river that form a channel. They have adopted magic to the point where it is essential for their survival. Through worship, you are in part giving a small amount of your own to them. That in and of itself is small enough that it may never affect your lives, but in large enough quantities is enough to grow and sustain them. However, it is impermanent. To remain truly deities, the gods require a more permanent source of power. And that is why, when you die, they wish to retain their hold on your spirit. It is a way of allowing them to endure. Some do this through force, others do this through gestures of kindness, extending a hand to the lost soul who's been severed from its mortal coil and offering it a place to stay. Regardless of how they do it, the outcome is the same. You become a part of their power, a resource for them to draw on. That is why, as long as they have a connection to their faithful, the gods will endure. The magic you seek to combat undoes that. It severs that bond, renders them vulnerable. At which point they are still powerful, but able to be defeated permanently. There is a little more depth to it than that, but that is essentially what you face.
Something that can sever the god's connection to the flows of magic.
Yes.
Doesn't that mean, well, I don't know about like our spellcasters, people that draw from the weave, but like someone like myself would be completely unaffected by that, wouldn't they?
On the subject of whether or not this sort of magic would affect yourselves, magic on such grand a scale being used on yourselves would be like using a typhoon to extinguish a candle flame. There are already simple enough magics that would achieve the same thing without the need for grand rituals and icons. These weapons that are used against the gods must be specifically crafted, and it is not easy to do so. It must be created in direct antithesis to everything that that being stands for. I would not worry about your foes trying to wield that power against yourselves. It would be grossly unnecessary for them to do so.
That's good to know. Guess. Well, you've already told us quite a bit about it. Well, or at least we've learned quite a bit about it. Is there any way of preventing someone from being able to do this, or like as in using, like casting such or performing such rituals? Or would that depend on the ritual or the target?
It would,
Because, as you said, it has to be like the.
it is a very specific ritual, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of investment and a extensive arcane knowledge to be able to recreate it. Undoing such a thing as yourselves is as simple a matter as destroying the icon that is the center of the ritual, or slaying whatever creature is sustaining the ritual.
Like what we had, like what we did in the Feywild when they went after Tallithsyr.
What
had that
precisely
weird-
did you achieve?
Well, they had a bizarre statue thing that they were wheeling towards us, and once it was destroyed, his power was restored.
That sounds like an icon to me.
So, in theory, they could cast this ritual, create these icons, or bind it to a person, you said, and then...
They must both create the icon and bind it to an individual. The two stages are integral. You cannot perform one without the other.
So then, destroying the icon or slaying the individual either or cancels the
Precisely.
ritual.
Actually, excuse me,
And-
an idea. Such grand magics must surely, like, ripple through the weave, or like, that's not something I might imagine you can just hide.
There are ways.
No.
But if one knew what to look for, it might be possible to find it.
I think, at least if you think you're up for it a little bit, perhaps if we knew what to look for, you could tune your, well, at least you'd know what to feel, or what direction to take it in, like, or how to find it, track it, something along those lines.
The Raven Queen leans back, like crosses her legs, and like strokes her chin with her fingers as the two of you are having this conversation. She's regarding this conversation with great interest.
I doubt it can be as simple as that.
It's certainly
Maybe
not
it could.
simple. But depending on your abilities, it is not outside of the realm of possibility.
So it would be possible to potentially detect when someone had cast such a ritual and pinpoint where it had been cast.
Theoretically. Though I would have no idea where to begin.
And I fear that would require a much greater understanding of the magic itself than it is perhaps safe to have. We don't need to understand the ritual itself to know that, well, how to cancel it and how to fight it.
No,
Because
but
by the fact that that icon was there in the Feywild at all, then presumably the icon and its binder still have to be somewhat close to whoever their target is.
well, I assume they used some teleportation tricks or trickery. But the reason why I asked is
Get it there.
it's like, sure, we need to know how to cancel it, but if we don't know where it is or where it's happening, it's kind of hard to cancel something if you don't know it's happening.
True.
And well, like, I felt like you've gone through quite some challenges. You've learned how to enchant a weapon, just like slap on the.
As
Like,
as great a weapon as that is, I feel that's rather mundane in comparison to what's being suggested, though of course I wouldn't be adverse to trying, but like I said, I imagine it would require a much deeper understanding of the ritual than I currently have, or would even be safe to have if this is a magic that we want to prevent from getting out there.
well, I can't force you, nor do I know what it would even. Well, I'm not quite sure what it would require.
And, well, as the Raven Queen has mentioned, she doesn't even, or not even she knows how to begin tracking the ritual in such a way.
Was a time where nobody even knew how to perform, or nobody knew how to perform this magic. There's a first for everything. Because even though I feel like the world is kind of stuck in its magical ways, always using the same magic over and over and over. I feel like if you, I think it's about time somebody came in and actually used their proper understanding of magic to achieve something new. Although, if this was what you did, we would not be able to document it for obvious reasons.
Of course.
But it would be, well, it would basically be. It would. I think Letterman would look up to you instead of vice versa.
That was the Raven Queen chuckling.
Yeah. Okay, look. Like, is it even to... Okay. Out of character. How possible is it even to try and track lesser magic in such a way?
I mean, you know spells that do that. Admittedly on a much smaller scale.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I guess detect magic is
Yep.
doing a similar thing, but
You just have to amp it up a little,
Yeah.
a lot.
You need to take detect magic and span it across all of the planes.
okay. I suppose I could try and figure this out. If that's what you want me to do, I will do it.
Well,
I suppose you are right that we need to know where these weapons are being deployed if we're going to stop them.
Your opposition in this fight. You referred to him as Azrul.
Yes.
Tell me of him.
I attempted to do some research earlier. I came up with very little. I believe all we really know is that he was imprisoned in the Black Ziggurat within the Forbidden City, along with a cult of necromancers. I'm not entirely sure when.
Well, we know a little more than that. We know what happened during the first. Like, he was around during the First Age, when essentially a bunch of the most powerful spellcasters at the time decided that he was such a danger that they needed to lock him up. Well, and that became, as Elizabeth said, known as the Black Ziggurat. That's where they kept him. During his stay in the Black Ziggurat, well, actually, I'm not sure if it happened during his stay or before.
Well, regardless, at some point he's managed to transform himself into a lich.
Yes.
And find ways to transform his followers into similar but weaker forms of immortal undead.
Mindless beings. Well, say mind.
They were still sentient. They just weren't powerful as powerful, and they were still bound to an individual.
I still wouldn't want to face one on my own.
No. The Raven Queen nods throughout this whole thing, and you can see her visibly grinding her teeth.
But yeah, I suppose all we really know is he was a necromancer was part of it. We don't even know if he led this group of necromancers or if he was just a lesser member. But his group was imprisoned hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago. And at some point recently, he's been able to escape.
Yes.
He's now taken leadership of the Dread Legion, and
we've been able to learn a few things about his movements, but they don't seem predictable.
We don't know enough to draw a pattern.
That sounds like necromancers to me. When I knew of them, the necromancers of the First Age did experiment with phylacteries and lichdom. And they had limited success. I suppose your Azrul has managed to perfect the process. I will tell you what I know of these Liches and their process, as his destruction would be as much in my interests as it would be in yours. How much do you know of Liches?
How much do I know of Liches?
Well, we encountered one. However, they had a singular phylactery.
No, what you encountered was a mummy lord, which is slightly different.
Okay.
We haven't met an actual. Well, we met a.
But it is a similar premise.
Skull.
I guess the fact that it uses the phylactery is close enough. But like.
Also, isn't that flaming skull thing that we encountered that one time a lesser form of lich?
Yes, but nowhere near as powerful or resilient.
Yeah.
It's a lesser lich in the same way that the bone claws are lesser liches.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess what we know about lich, I guess this lich specifically, is that they have several phylacteries, and perhaps once we encounter them, well, unless you have a way of separating from or severing the ties between him and his phylacteries. We're best off keeping him alive till we have found all of them. However, finding all the phylacteries is like finding, well, they say a needle in a haystack, but I think a needle would be quite big compared to all the plains and...
A needle across 500 miles of farmland.
Yeah.
I understand the daunting nature of the task, but I think perhaps here is where I can lend information that will aid you. Unlike other forms of undeath, the false immortality granted by lichdom persists across planes, as you mention, but a phylactery in and of itself is unstable, or at least they were when I last encountered them. A phylactery has to be sustained by ritual sacrifice, and the Lich himself must be present for the process. The time duration is variable, but most of them are not capable of sustaining for more than a month.
I guess that explains why we've heard he's had to make more.
Well, I guess, yeah, those are your options. Either you refresh the old ones, or you just keep on making new ones.
Making a new phylactery is not an easy process. It requires a grand gesture of sorts, a significant kill, or other unholy process to create one.
We also, due to the nature of what they were imprisoned in, we don't know if he's had free reign in there. Has he been able to continue his research?
Oh, actually, would you happen to know how long a you would expect a phylactery to remain potent or usable?
As I said, about a month.
Oh, about a month. So, oh, my bad. So, if we could detain them, well, detain might be the wrong word. We could simply hold them somewhere for a month and then finish them off. That would be all we need to do. Although holding a lich for a month seems like a bit of a daunting task. It's better than eternity.
Your plan has grounding, but the necromancers of the First Age were wily. They were openly hunted by the Council of Eight, and those that survived became very well versed in remaining hidden and fortifying their defenses. I would be surprised if this Azrul would allow himself to be captured in such a way. But perhaps, with things as they are, it might be easier than I thought. The Dread Legion is currently in disarray. He will have a task ahead of him to ensure that those phylacteries that he has entrusted to his followers remain safe.
So, well, from what you said, phylacteries aren't easy to make. So let's say
and sustaining them takes significant effort.
So, yes. So let's say one of the well, let's call them rebel groups within his organization has a phylactery. It would, by the sounds of it, be worth reobtaining that through potentially lethal means, or, well, brute force, or whatever it takes, really.
he would certainly value them enough to commit significant resources to doing so. I suspect he will have entrusted some of them to his closest followers, but if he is savvy, he will have kept several of his own safe, hidden from even his closest allies. And of course, he will somewhere have a stronghold, a powerhouse, a lair, where he will concentrate his power for a last stand if needed.
Makes sense.
I feel this plan of capture probably has... I mean, I don't know about you guys, but tracking down and destroying every single phylactery and then going on an all-out assault sounds a little more difficult than trying to find a way to bait him and hold him until his phylacteries die down.
I would agree.
Even with an army at our side. Whereas if we were to get our hands on one phylactery, if he values them as much as we think, he may come after us for it.
Well, I was thinking something along the lines is track down a phylactery and then set up an ambush. But I guess that could be the other way of doing it.
Your trap would need to be well baited to capture such an ancient necromancer. I doubt he would ride so boldly into the jaws of his opponents.
Well, it's not so much... I'm not expecting it to be easy, but... Well, actually, like, I don't even really truly expect him to be retrieving it himself until he has no choice.
Indeed. Those I hunted in my time were canny. They would send underlings, summoned fiends, all those sort of things before they would even consider going into something themselves. One or two I managed to catch off guard through cunning, but it is not an easy process. But you have proven yourself to be resourceful individuals.
Yes, but... Well, I guess this will just be a new task to prove ourselves in.
I think that this is a task for us to adapt into a new kind of fighting that we haven't done yet. I think this is a point where we need to sort of go on a war of subterfuge.
Subterfuge is useful, but do not underestimate strength of arms as well. Very often the way I flushed out my opponents was by using martial force to pressure them into making a mistake.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is finding with the Dread Legion split, they're already making minor mistakes. I guess we could have people looking into those mistakes, looking for those mistakes, I should say, tracking down cells or location or bases of operations, and, well, we make a show of swooping in, and then a combination of our force of arms and just generally keeping an eye on them, we may be able to locate phylacteries, his his followers, his more loyal
Well-
followers, and maybe even the man himself eventually.
Well, I guess we've already started the process. However, that is a very very long game that, like, even though we've got it rolling, it's going to take a long time. Well, I guess for all we know, it could, like, turn something up tomorrow, or it could never turn anything up. But because we've started our network of, well, attempting, or at least attempted to start up our network to figure out where people are doing things are going on. But we still need to find a way to actually, or we still need a plan to actually act on what we find, or a plan for what we're gonna do. Because I'm still not certain. I guess phylacteries, they are relatively easy to identify to the layman, or could we give an easy description that your average peasant would be able to recognize?
Your average peasant will not recognize a phylactery. A phylactery can be anything in its inert state.
That is unfortunate.
There
So we
are keys, however. Anyone versed in magic will be able to identify them by their aura.
Okay.
Simple spell to detect magic would do so.
I'm guessing.
There is also a circumstance when a phylactery becomes active. When the Lich's physical form is destroyed and he is seeking to reform, the objects will become more visible. They will begin to leak magical power. It's the process through which the Lich can reincarnate.
Which is, if I remember, well, if it's anything like what I remember, it's a few weeks.
Depends upon the circumstance. But it is not a quick process. That, of course, requires you to catch and kill a Lich first.
Well,
Which,
I'm more thinking of the odds are that if we were to catch him, we still have to stop him from killing himself to just get out. Does a Lich have any choice in what phylactery they go to?
and if they have multiple phylacteries, do they all show these signs at once, or just the one that they'll reformat?
To your first question, I do not have an answer. That was a puzzle I never solved. To the second, I believe they would all become active at the same time. At least until one was chosen.
Interesting.
I only
So
ever
let's say-
directly held a phylactery a handful of times.
So, a phylactery requires maintenance once a month, roughly, maybe once every other month. Let's say they've improved their powers or efficiency.
Assuming they have gotten better, yes.
So, that would mean, in order to be they would reasonably only be able to sustain a handful of phylacteries, even if they had all the resources. Unless somebody brought the phylacteries to them instead, then they would be able to do more. But even then, it'd be limited.
That would be a risk to the Lich if their enemies were intelligent.
So let's say, what would be a reasonable time frame? Every 5 days of phylactery, or is it weekly more reasonable? So it requires sacrifice. And I imagine you don't want to be doing it every day, because, he's got plans, got to do stuff.
He wouldn't want to be in permanent travel between his phylacteries.
Although it might... So he probably won't have more than 5 or 6.
If he
Well, I
has
guess-
followers helping him to sustain them, he needs only be there for the final part of the ritual. He could be there for a matter of hours and then returned.
Well, and I
His
guess-
personal phylacteries he will need to maintain himself.
Well, and I guess he does have... Well, at least we haven't explicitly confirmed it, but I'm pretty sure he has access to teleportation.
If he is in command of magic powerful enough to become a Lich, translocating across planes and space would not be a difficult
So-
task.
So I guess then he could just have, let's say he has 1 day a week where he just teleports around. Yeah, now we're already up to like well over 20 phylacteries. Well, that's a bit of a bummer. However, it's important. So, okay.
The Raven Queen is like listening to you going through this with great intent, and sort of like is regarding you with almost. You haven't really seen her ever have a kindly visage, but she is definitely regarding you with a smile.
Well, I guess that's something. Honestly, after this is over, I should probably write a book, How to Catch a Lich. Oof. That said, so I think we're just gonna have to do like you said, Elizabeth. Or well, I think you kind of suggested it. We're just gonna have to capture a factory, maybe 2, if we're that lucky. We're clearly gonna have to send out either clerics or paladins or something along those lines, or wizards that are capable of detecting a phylactery. If we're gonna do this remotely.
I definitely think that despite, as you said, it would be a slow process, but it's a process which, although it's slow for us, it would also slow him down considerably.
Oh no, well, if you remember, we've already started it. Although we might want to step up our efforts a little bit.
Exactly.
Although
Going back to god-killing magic, though. Once they have performed the ritual and they have their icon, do the icon and whoever it's bound to have to stay together for the ritual to work?
They do not have to remain in proximity of it the whole time, but in order to complete the process, they will need to be in close proximity.
Only because there was when we fought alongside Tritherion, there was a figure being carried on a throne by servants who we suspected we thought might have been our new leader of the Dread Legion, but
well, this could very well have been Azrul. Like, why not, right?
If he sought to
Also,
destroy Tallithsyr, then I see no other reason for him to bind the icon to anyone other than him.
so if he was going to destroy a god, he probably would bind it to himself.
Yes, that's also what I was kind of thinking.
But of course, once he's bound it, could he simply remain elsewhere while the icon was moved to whoever he wanted to target? He chose to watch that particular battle, but
He would have had to have been there at the climax for it to have performed its function.
yes.
That's
Besides,
risky.
I think that is the like, you don't have to be there for everything, but that does seem like the kind of moments that you might want to, be around. I think because even though he might be hiding, he's still a powerful lich, and if need be, I imagine he could have. I honestly believe if he had personally come to the front line, we may not have been as lucky as we were. However, considering, well, we discovered this was a test run as our as we've been informed of. He might also just have wanted to see what it looks like at that time.
If it is the first time he has performed the ritual, then it is possible he is not entirely certain of the requirements. It is a complex magic, and not everyone who has used it has fully understood the risks when it was used. As for his desire to be there as a lich, I very much understand why he was there. There is one thing that those who pursue lichdom seek in abundance, and that is power. And there is no power greater than that released when a god is slain.
Oh, I didn't consider the fact that he might have been able to absorb whatever would have been unlocked, or
He would have needed to. You recall how I mentioned that we are extensions of the weave, and that gods have taken place in integral part of it. To remove a god from the equation is to remove a dam from a lake. There is a great deal of power behind it, and unchecked, that power has destructive potential. Not just to those around it, but to the fabric of magic itself.
So, had he not been there to absorb the outflux of power, it could have wrought untold damage.
Precisely.
Strange, considering that, well, I suppose he's seeking power, but... I'm starting to understand the Dread Legion more, weirdly. Because if he was there, that explains why there's this splinter in the Legion. People claiming that the new leadership is diverting from their original purpose. Because if the Dread Legion really are just seeking to destroy everything, I would have seen no reason to simply not just let that magic wreak its destruction. But of course,
well,
if a lich has taken control and the lich seeks more power, it explains why this divide has happened. Those people are realizing that he's just doing it for himself.
There is one very bold assumption that you're making there, and that's the fact that they understand exactly what's going on.
True.
It's like without
True.
your help, looking at the Raven Queen, we would have I don't think we would have known. And I
It
doubt they
is
have
not a magic known by many, and it is guarded closely for that exact reason.
Yeah, I doubt the average follower is going to know. Although, admittedly, like, Ferrous Doom being the god of madness and all might just tell them for fun. Who knows? They can actually hear him speak.
That has given me another thought. If gods are such immense residues of power like that, would one being cut off by whatever this magic is not be detectable as... Could that not be detectable as well?
Well, like, I guess in a direct sense, yes, because you wouldn't... Like, I imagine you wouldn't... Like, the clerics wouldn't have their full... Wouldn't be working at full capacity, so to speak.
Not necessarily. As I said, the weave of magic is a flow. Damming it will still create trickles. Aside from those closest to the deity themselves, I would be surprised if the average cleric noticed the difference.
Of course, that's the other noticeable thing that resulted when Trictarion was cut off. I suppose. The fact that his angels could no longer reform either.
That would be one symptom.
And of course, the fact that the angel that we chanced to meet in the Shadowfell knew of the danger, despite being locked up for however long he was there.
Out of game note, he knew that because he overheard the...
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I was gonna say he
Yeah.
heard the Cabal talking about it, which
Pretend
is
I
how
didn't
he
say that
knew.
then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so... Okay.
For some reason, like, I have like the worst idea. Like,
Oh no.
like, what if we could just have all the gods just report in every now and then? It's like, oh, everything's good. Just send them a prayer, like, like a subscription service, like God safety.
What?
Surely it's
You know,
worth...
keep
well,
yourself
surely-
safe as a god.
Yeah.
And
Surely
we'll
it's
show
worth...
up if you need it.
Surely it's worth warning them that someone is walking around with this kind of power.
Yeah,
I
probably.
don't know how we're supposed to reach all the gods with that information, though.
Are you having this conversation in character?
I guess that this last part definitely, the
Okay.
warning the gods might be worth it.
To which the Raven Queen chuckles lightly and says, "They are aware of the danger that exists, but many have chosen to sequester themselves away from aid purely because they believe that the others will use that knowledge against them. And not without good reason."
I guess at that point, there's not much helping.
No.
Just to be clear, considering we're spending, well, decent amount of time here, we won't be, because you said time was subjective, but we won't be coming back like months later, right?
She shakes her head and says, "This is... I suppose the closest description I can give you is a moment.
Okay.
Everything that happens here is happening at the same time. Every time any one of you has ever been here, you have been here in the same moment.
So what you're saying is, right now, those two are off somewhere else with Vondal and the others on their adventure when they first came here to the Shadowfell. And at the same time, all of us are still back in the stronghold.
No. What I am saying is, in this moment, I am having every conversation I have ever had in this hall simultaneously.
That's gotta be distorting.
It has taken a considerable degree of my power to establish.
Well, if that's good. Well, the fact that it takes a lot of power is not good, but the fact that it works is good. Catching a lich is, but I guess as far as what did we learn about the magic? Well, kill the idol, or destroy the idol, kill the well, I'll call it the host of the spell,
The caster.
carrier, the caster. Wait, does the caster have to be the one that is carrying it?
By virtue of carrying it, they would be considered the caster. Just
Okay. Well, I guess in the end,
it's like if you cast a ritual spell that lasts for a duration, you are still the caster regardless of how much duration has elapsed.
Oh yeah, but I wasn't sure if you could like be the caster and then like put like the channel it through.
Someone else with
no.
Have someone else
So
be the channel.
so if this was a functional D&D spell, it would have a range of self.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. But that also explains why he would be the one carrying it, because he would be the only one that would be willing to. Well, he would be the only one that he wants to be able to cast the spell.
Okay, I guess what I'm thinking here is the things that we want to do is continue our hunt for sections of the Dread Legion, continuing to put pressure on them, while at the same time, I guess I can look into trying to find ways to detect this ritual.
Let's say just detect grand magic in general.
Yeah.
Well, like, however you're gonna go about it, that's up to you. Although I will admit that I'm not sure if this was because I have no clue how long developing something like this takes, or if these people have been on this for years potentially.
Never looked into the idea of making a spell before.
It would also need a phenomenal source of power to achieve something that grand. I do not think this would be a single-person task.
You wouldn't be on your own, I guess. Although, if you need more casters, you probably need to find someone more capable than me. And I don't know if the others are the right type of magic. Just looking at the,
I suppose.
Arya.
See, the only other source of casters I can think of is the college up in Argentellorand, but I don't know if they'd be willing to help us, or if it'd even be safe to explain the details of what we need.
I guess the question you have to ask is, well, I guess it depends. Because the act of detecting forbidden magic doesn't seem very harmful.
It's not.
However, if it requires components that could potentially be used for,
It's not. it's not their opinion on the spell that would be created or whatever that I'm worried about. It's, you know, explaining the details of the Dread Legion and what's going on that I'm concerned about. They wouldn't want to just cast a spell that powerful on a whim just because we said so. We'd have to explain why we're doing it, and getting into that is a mess.
To be fair, we would only have to... Well, I guess we'd have to convince the council. However, I think if we knew we were... If you're certain, or at least certain enough, I think we can... Like, I'll find a way. I'll find a way to persuade them.
Well,
I wish you the best of luck. Mages are phenomenally stubborn.
They might be, but so am I.
Well, think about how difficult it was to get them to convince them just to allow us to conduct our little experiment.
Oh, don't worry.
Simulating the Shadowfell.
Like
that is a spell on a much grander scale.
I'm aware, but like for this kind of spell, we're not trying to convince them to approve the work of some professor that they don't agree with. We'll have a lot, like the stakes will be a lot higher. Our investment in this will be many times greater.
Well, that may be true, but we'd also have to convince them to not just allow it, but help with it.
Like I said, don't worry about that part. Like, if there's a will, there's a way.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like creating a spell is a significant step up from just enchanting a sword for the first, you know?
Well, I didn't mean like the sword is like the peak of your capabilities. I meant that as in you never in your lifetime did you think you were going to create a sword of such quality.
I suppose I never saw myself enchanting items for a while at
least. Like you learned that in no time. Like and that's ignoring all the other stuff. Like I doubt you imagine you would be planes hopping. Like like that's not it's not I don't think I've ever met anyone. Have I met anyone that is even capable of such thing? Well, I guess maybe the Raven Queen here, but and Tarfarian, but that's I don't feel like those.
The Raven Queen pretends to fan herself at the flattery.
But that's like comparing yourself to those kinds of people. Well, that's not really a fair comparison, now is it?
I suppose you're right. Although it's not like I learned how to enchant it on my own.
Oh?
I still have Luthari's help.
That's true, but this time, yeah, help might be a little more scarce. But as soon as you figure out what you need, you'll be able to direct people to things that are more suited to their skill level. Perhaps you learn that you need, I don't know, a rock from a mountaintop. Then we'll find someone who can go get something. Get some, maybe need coral from the bottom of the ocean, and we'll find someone who can do that for you. Help might not come in the same way, but we'll find ways to help.
I guess I need to start looking into magic theory then.
You can do it. You've done many things that I'm pretty sure you never believed possible, at least. And if you did believe it, then I wouldn't have believed you at the time. But look at where you are now. Like, blowing up armies, teleporting around planes, having conversations with with gods. That's, I guess the Raven Queen technically isn't the god, but you know, it's close.
It's extremely weird seeing you talk this encouragingly.
Well, usually you don't need, like, usually you've got encouragement enough on your own. Well, sometimes a little too much, but I guess it's in this case you might need. Sometimes you just need to see that you've got the potential, and taking that step beyond what you're used to, beyond your safe area. You know, it's hard, and you've taken a lot of steps, be it before, but this one will be this will be like a jump into the dark. It will be like crossing that bridge all over again, potentially.
The Raven Queen smiles and says, "I'm glad you learned something."
Yeah, no, you don't. Yeah, fuck it. How hard can it be? Make a spell.
And if it doesn't if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, we'll find another way. However, now I believe you can do it. You're like, I think you're the, like, if anybody's gonna do it, it's you.
Well then, what are you guys gonna do while I'm hitting books and experimenting with magic?
That is an excellent question. Guess we'll have to find out what we'll be able to do.
I think perhaps then this is the time for me to lay my cards on the table.
What do you mean?
I have an interest in your success against the Dread Legion. Your goals align with mine. I can provide you certain assistances. My Sorrowsworn can aid you where they can, and I am more than willing to assist as necessary. I have only one request, if that is to be so.
Oh, what would that request be?
Join me.
In what way? Because that is going to be important.
My goal is to bring balance to life and death. To do so will be to restore the flow of magic, so that the weave, Gaia, call it what you will, continues to thrive. Without the flow of the weave, magic dries up, and the world would fall to entropy. As it is, I've told you the major causes of that entropy. The hoarding of power. I need people who believe in my cause.
The problem is not so much not believing in your cause, it's considering all the consequences of pledging our allegiance. Because personally, I believe that it would be for the better However, I foresee some issues with, well, the others looking over.
Yeah. We don't even know what would be expected to do. Not to mention I already follow another god, and I don't know if she'd be cool with it.
Yeah, that was also what I was thinking.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Raven Queen sort of like nods understandingly and just sort of says, "Then let me tell you the story of how I became who I am." I think she turns to Elizabeth and says, "Do they still tell stories of the Sorcerer Queen?" You can roll me a history check if you'd like to try and recall that.
Recall what? Sorry, quickly.
Oh, she said, "Do they still tell stories of the Sorcerer Queen?"
Do they still tell stories of the Sorcerer Queen?
Roll a history check.
No,
Okay.
no, they don't.
So
Guys.
the only Sorcerer Queen you know of is a fairy tale. And it is a fairy tale about basically standing up to bullies. It's essentially a story about there is this proud and powerful empress who rules over like this massive kingdom, and then basically says she goes around essentially being a bully, being wanting to be in charge of everything and telling people what they can and can't do, and until people stand up to her, she basically gets her own way. And then when two people stand up to her, everyone else starts to stand up to her, and she's rendered powerless by everyone standing up to her. That's the only story of a Sorcerer Queen you know.
In that case, yeah, she probably then just says, "Well, I'm aware of a fairy tale that's been told that might be similar, but the queen in question doesn't come out of it favorably."
The Raven Queen nods and says, "Then the stories may be the same."
In which case, yeah, she'd probably just tell the fairy tale.
Okay. Throughout the telling of the fairy tale, the Raven Queen gets a very sour look on her face.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you finish, she says, "Well, it really does seem that history is written by the victors."
As is always the case. Unfortunately.
I'm gonna stop this track from cycling and play something different. So yeah, the Raven Queen straightens up and says, "From my perspective, I was a benevolent queen. Though whether or not that is the truth is a matter of opinion, and in the grander scheme of things does not matter. I ruled what was once known as the Eastern Empire. Again, not strictly relevant. I protected my people by waging war on those who were threats that could not be dealt with by conventional means. Necromancers, monstrosities, undead. I became very powerful and very important in realm politics. I had the ear of the Council of the Eight, and as far as I know, I was very well respected. Unfortunately, I had my enemies. And one such enemy sought fit to plot my downfall. He gained the ear of two of my closest bodyguards, and had me assassinated. My torment did not end there, however, as the enemy I had made was none other than the god of death himself. He had plotted to claim my spirit as a trophy, to show his newfound dominance. The world was in chaos, you understand. There was war between mortals and gods, and death was common currency. He grew strong and confident from those deaths, and he decided that I would be the crown prize in his arsenal. He made me his bride, and used me as a puppet commander for his forces. I did not give in easily. I learned how to resist. And through my resistance, I learned the secret of the magic that I have told you about. The power to undo a god. With what materials I could smuggle back from the various invasions of the material plane, I was able to construct my own idol. And when Azrul was sufficiently weakened and overconfident in his abilities, I murdered him. And to prevent anyone from ever suffering the same fate as me again, I seized his power. I underestimated him, I will admit, and it took me a great deal of time to master his power. And when I finally have the control that I have now, it is not enough to become a fully fledged god. Parts of it have returned to the weave, and other parts of it have been seized by other interested powers. I have been endeavouring to consolidate my power ever since. But I cannot do that without help. I approached your friend first, the child of Gaia, and she understood my goals, though she questioned my methods. And so now I find myself turning to you. If I don't restore the balance, this world will slowly suffocate and die. It will become stagnant, no longer capable of supporting life. Your gods know this, and they choose to ignore it. Their own survival is more important to them than continued existence, because they fear that the moment they begin to relinquish control, others will take it from them. So I have elected to remove their control from the matter. As those of you who have been here before know, I have a say. I control where people go, or where spirits go, when their mortal coil is at an end. And I use that to give them a choice. That, in itself, is really what I'm asking you. Help me enforce that choice. Understand that death is a finality that should be respected.
Out of character. I don't know if we can do that, considering we've brought people back to life before.
She knows that.
Okay.
Also, in order to bring someone back to life, they have to consent.
But yeah, the Raven Queen like pauses at that sentence and says, "That is a story I do not give up lightly. But seeing your drive to achieve things, as I once did, perhaps it will help you understand." I'm not asking you to pledge fealty here and now. I'm simply asking you to consider it and know that time is not on our side. She just sort of waits in silence to see if anyone speaks.
Yes. Graham kind of looks at Kelariis, because Kelariis is the only one that hasn't said anything yet, and probably is the one that is most affected out of all of us.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, and Kelariis was thinking. I think I kind of like Kelariis kind of lets like the silence sit for just a moment, like not a really long time, and just I mean no disrespect, but I know that I personally cannot swear fealty to you in at least the same way that I have already done with Tallithsyr. But if what you are asking for is people to have a choice, I see no fault in that, and depending on what exactly you're asking, I don't think that and I cannot speak for my companions, of course, but I do not think that I will have a problem with that.
She sighs a little and just sort of like bows her head slightly.
Again, that is with no disrespect to you, of course.
I understand. You have been given one vision, and it is meaningful to you. And I hope that, given time, you might realize that it has flaws. Perhaps one day the time will come and I will be able to convince you.
Perhaps, but now is not that time.
See. Well, I guess, like, on one hand, I kind of see why. Well, I see why you're against the Red Legion, but, like, from what you're saying, the fact that, like, if they were to get rid of the gods, that would release. Well, I guess in this case, the Lich would try and take the power. but that would mean the power goes free, right? If the Lich failed to absorb it.
As I said with my previous analogy of the dam and the lake,
Yes.
a release of energy like that is too dangerous to be done so unchecked.
But it cannot really be done in... can it be done in lesser ways? Like, or is it like the only way if they give it up freely?
You see, that is my goal. Much like the dam, there is always water that leaves, either through leaks or through evaporation into the air to become rain. Eventually, if the water chooses not to return to the lake will dry up, and a river will form elsewhere. That is my goal.
Yes, I'm still... Well, even though I see... On one hand, I kind of see what you want to achieve, and it seems, as far as at least as far as I can tell, it seems like I think noble cause would be... It would be an okay way to describe it. I'm still struggling to see how we would... how this would ever work. But I guess sometimes...
I'm not asking you to comprehend the whole picture. I need your help in the short scale. This is something your friend got hooked up on as well. Needing to see the bigger picture.
Well, there's always... See, like, the problem is not seeing the bigger picture of how it would work is... The only way you can do that is if you're, well, following blindly. However, following blindly is the same thing that leads to things like the Red Legion. Which, don't get me wrong, I highly doubt that that is your intention. But as you might see, that is why I struggle to accept something without a clue as to how you wish to go about it. Although I guess if I disagree, I would always have the opportunity to, well, break my commitment. However, that would always... Then it feels wrong to commit in the first place if that was something that I would always consider doing. All I can say is I support the idea. However, until I know the execution, like your plan of execution, I cannot support you specifically. Because otherwise I might be supporting, well, Ferrous doing himself without knowing it, essentially.
She rubs her temple with one hand and looks visibly frustrated and just says, "Fine. We don't have to do this now."
But till I believe you're... Well, I guess till I believe you're acting in malice, or in the militia, I guess you'll have my support.
Well, if you need further convincing, then you need only reach out. I will do my best to find you. And I suppose she turns to Elizabeth and Arya, because the other two have been surprisingly quiet, and just sort of says, "And what say the two of you?"
I already have allegiance to one god. And
She grits her teeth slightly.
Hey man, I've lived 100 with something years. You're not the first god I've come across. I don't say that. And I'm afraid I don't believe I can break those vows.
She doesn't respond to that and just turns to Elizabeth and says, "And what of you? Do the gods hold sway for you as well?"
I need time to consider.
Fine. If we are done here, she looks for any objection.
I believe we are.
Okay. In that case, the four of you just return to the small chamber with a fireplace and furniture, with Vokesis, who is just observing you. Did you find what you sought?
I'm not sure, but I think we got closer to what we were seeking.
At the very least, we know what we need to do now.
The Raven Queen might actually. Do you speak to the Raven Queen? Not that I wish for you to do that right now, but
We have ways to communicate. Why?
because I realized there was something I didn't get to say, but I don't think it's too urgent. 'Cause I think she knows already. What I thought I should probably mention, even though we may not be able to fully dedicate ourselves to her cause, doesn't mean that we won't be there to support her when when she needs it.
I'm sure if she requires it, she will find you.
That's what I thought.
I would not concern yourself with that, however. The Sorrowsworn keep a very close eye on our affairs.
That is not the reason why I'm worried. But that is for the Queen to worry about. If that day ever comes, for one reason or another, guess we'll find out. But till then, I hope I hope that you and the rest of her army. Would you consider yourself an army?
Vokesis chuckles. Says, "I do not think either of those terms suits."
Yes, that's why I'm a little
Devoted,
Well-
I think, would be the best term.
So I guess in that case, I hope you and your devotees will forever be enough. Because if not, then that must be one hell of a problem.
He smiles and just says, "Oh, well. If all goes well, then perhaps the next time I see you will be when it is your time."
Well, let's hope. Goodbye. At least I should.
Yeah, at which point, like, he sort of says, "I suppose then you will be leaving."
I was just gonna say goodbye, but then I realized that I would rather not have to cross a second time if possible.
What do you mean?
Oh well, because if we're going back, I was gonna go back over the bridge.
He doesn't want
Oh,
to reach
yes.
us.
Yeah, like,
That's
Vogesis nods and sort of says, "Follow me." And he moves over to the corner of the room where there's basically like a it's probably difficult to see behind like the stacks of books that are either sort of side of it, but he like moves these shelves aside and then unbars a heavy door and pulls the ring and like yanks it open into the room, and you immediately feel like as a howling gale like blows into the room. And over the gale, Vogesis says, "You can leave by the stairs."
Okay.
Yes, we leave by the stairs.
Okay, yeah, you step through the doorway, and yeah, you are basically like looking directly across the open chasm. You can see the tower of ice in the distance. That is probably a good few miles away.
Whoa.
Like you are at the opposite end of the massive canyon. Atop basically another towering spire that does indeed have a staircase that spirals downwards. And looking down over the railings, at the base of the tower there appears to be a small village.
So wait, are we actually just gonna... If we go down these stairs, is it just the way back to the material plane?
Who are you asking?
I don't know.
Because, like, Vogesis has just closed the door behind you.
Yeah, he probably
Well-
says that and then realizes and then goes, oh.
Guess there's only one way from here. So
Down.
you did bring our fork, right? The material fork.
Always do.
Good.
The material fork is very funny for some reason.
Cereal fork.
Do
Like, you know.
you have a spell slot for that?
I do.
You do, okay.
I have to use a higher level spell slot, but I have one.
Okay.
Good.
I just like the idea that we just carry around a fork.
Actually, I have multiple forks.
I mean,
Yep.
you
I
you
have at
probably
least
do
3
all carry forks as part of your mess kit, but
Yeah, I'll
But-
do that.
But I assume these are more like tuning forks instead
Yes.
of.
Well, yeah,
Food
these are
forks.
also, yeah, these are 250 gold each.
Oh my
Forks.
god, were they made out of fucking gold?
I don't know.
Jesus
I don't know what
Christ.
they're made of, but they specify they have to be at least worth at least
platinum, I would
250.
imagine.
Yeah, a
Mm.
fork's metal rod worth
God.
at least 250 gold is what I need.
I mean,
So-
I've seen tuny forks in real life, and they are not that fancy.
Yeah, these are
Yeah.
really fancy tuning forks.
But
It's a-
real life tuning forks also don't allow you to jump across dimensions.
I
Yeah.
mean, I guess.
Yeah.
But they do make a funny noise if you put them between your teeth.
Wait, hold on. Why would you do that?
Why would you?
Have
put
you
it
never
in your
done that?
mouth?
To hear a silly noise.
No!
So yeah, if you tap a tuning fork against the edge of a table and then put the like not the fork end but like the other end between your teeth, you can hear the note in your skull.
Oh.
Yeah, like that makes sense. I just don't know
That's
why
cool.
that's like the instinct.
Yeah, I would. You know.
Look, I'll tell you why. Because 9 times out of 10, people get their inner baby, they see a new thing, and they think, what happens if I put this thing in my mouth?
I mean, I don't know. My music teacher just said put this between your teeth.
Oh.
For fuck's sake, it was.
That's-
Ugh.
Your music teacher's weird.
Well, that's good kind of
That's
weird.
kind
I
of
think
good.
sanitized.
Great. Well, I mean, like you
I
probably
mean,
don't like
yeah, you
bite it, yeah?
yeah. Well, you put it like you can either put it like up against your teeth or like on the edge of your teeth. But yeah, we did wipe them between doing it.
Thank God.
Also, we had a tuning fork each, so
I
That's
just like.
fancy as shit.
Yeah, you had a lot of tuning forks.
I mean there was only like 14 of us in a class.
Well, okay. Well,
That's
yeah,
still
still.
a lot.
Anyway,
That's still 14
We-
tuning
we're-
forks.
you are atop of a tower. What are you doing?
We're going down the tower.
Okay.
Go down the stairs.
So yeah, I guess you head down the stairs into the village, and we'll take a short break.